It is my pleasure to welcome you to the launch of BVI Forward. BVI Forward is the government's campaign to strengthen the financial services sector into the next 30 years and beyond of prosperity that it has produced for the BVI over the past 30 years. What is BVI Forward? In short, BVI Forward is the culmination of all of the work that has gone on for the past 3 years, since 2012, when the government started to look at the financial services sector. It includes the work undertaken by McKinsey & Co. and produced in a report which is available publicly. The BVI Forward initiative also includes a very far-reaching public relations communication campaign, and that is designated as the priority initiative of those that you see forth on the board. It involves ensuring that the entire BVI community, that the population of the BVI understands the industry a bit more, understands the opportunities, and is aware at all times as to the actions being undertaken by government to implement the initiatives.
The premiere started in 2012, and last year it gained momentum with the assistance of the world-renowned McKinsey Group that led us to the point that we are at today, where we can launch this program. It's a very important program, and I love the objective, and the main objective is to create a compelling future. I repeat, a compelling future for financial services in the British Virgin Islands and the opportunities that these financial services represent for British Virgin Islanders.
The compelling question is this: are we going to rise to the occasion, come together and build on the prosperous foundation our forefathers created? Are we going to give in to the challenges that seek to hold us back and set us back? I'm here to tell you today, as your leader, that I am rising to the occasion and strongly encourage each of you to rise with me. Working together, we can create a new foundation of prosperity to pass on to future generations. But how did we get here? The economic and financial crisis that began in 2008 changed the world and ignited a process of change in the rules governing the global financial system. These changes are affecting every nation and have impacted the lives of all of their citizens, including us here in the British Virgin Islands. Change has become the new norm, and those who embrace it will reap the benefits of the emerging new economic order. Since the crisis began, the government at Virgin Islands has worked tirelessly to keep pace with the changes coming at us from all directions, and we have done well. However, our unique circumstances here in the Virgin Islands require us to do more, and that is why we're here today. We are at the end of the beginning. What do I mean by this? When my government took office in 2011, our highest priority was to secure the future of our financial services sector. After all, it is the engine that fuels its economy along with tourism. By January 2012, we launched a territory-wide consultation to expand and solidify the industry. This culminated in a 3-month project beginning in August 2014, which was facilitated by global consultants McKinsey & Company. The output of all that work was a report with recommendations approved by Cabinet in January of this year and by the House of Assembly in February. By May, I had appointed Mr. Kedrick Malone as director to lead the team that would drive implementation of the report's recommendations. So today, we are at the end of the preparation, not at the beginning of taking action. The end of the beginning, and we are moving the BVI forward. BVI Forward represents a new beginning of a drive to create a new financial services foundation to drive the future prosperity of the Virgin Islands. The script is written, the world is waiting and watching. The curtain is opening today, and now it is time to perform. But this is not a one-man show. It is not a government show. It is not a financial sector show. It is a show for all of us, government and private sector, industry and non-industry, BVI lander, belonger, and expatriate, adults and children, local and international, everyone in the BVI moving together, moving forward together. The 10 priority initiative has been implemented as part of BVI Forward, which touch the lives of every man, woman, and child who call this territory home. We must therefore engage everyone. Each of us has a role to play in BVI Forward, and we must all embrace and play our role. The significant investment my government has made in BVI Forward will return little if you, the people of this territory, do not support this initiative. Each person must, in their own way, embrace and participate in BVI Forward.
Virtually all small islands that have financial services sectors have, at one time or another, been labeled a tax haven. What is a tax haven? If you ask 10 different people, you'll get perhaps 12 different answers. Whatever the answer, these days, you can be sure that any country that is called a tax haven is not being complimented. In fact, the phrase has migrated from having a suggestion of the exotic to being a downright pejorative. On my first visit to London as Minister of Finance, I was shocked at the vitriolic and hyperbolic rhetoric emanating from the powerful NGO community there, directed against so-called tax havens, including my island, Bermuda. We were characterized as the source of all evil in the world, including taking food from the mouths of starving babies in Africa. Oh, somebody said, I think, how is that? Well, the narrative is as follows. The narrative was that multinational corporations in extractive industries in Africa were diverting much needed tax and corporate revenue from local African economies, where it could be used to feed starving babies. Profit was then shifted overseas to tax havens. Crooked politicians in those African countries were bribed, and they, in turn, hid their dirty money in those tax havens. So, it was all blamed on the dots on the map, the tax havens. Never mind the crooked politicians who took the bribes and the companies that paid them. Never mind the fact that a significant percentage of those multinational corporations involved are headquartered in the UK and are listed on the London Stock Exchange. Never mind the fact that the assets of the well-funded NGOs and the pensions of millions of Britons are invested in these very same companies. Never mind all that. It's all the fault of those nefarious tax havens, those vampirish dots on the map that are sucking the lifeblood out of the global economy. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the cockamamie world that we live in today as offshore financial centers. Once upon a time, the only obligation a person or corporation had was to pay taxes he, she, or it was legally required to pay. That was pretty cut and dried. But now, paying taxes has morphed into the blurry and slippery world of the moral imperative. Judgments are being made about multinationals paying their fair share of taxes in a particular jurisdiction. Now, what does that mean? One thing it means to me is that having failed by means of laws and tax treaties to collect the tax revenues they want, major industrialized countries are turning to moral justifications that are replete with inconsistencies, double standards, and contradictions. OECD countries have moved from legal-based criteria for taxes, that is, either it's tax evasion or not, to something called aggressive tax avoidance, which, as far as I know, has no definition in law. What is the proof of this? The proof is the shifting goalposts of requirements to avoid various blacklists of being uncooperative or non-compliant. Since the late 1990s, these requirements frequently shifted. We comply with the changes that they demand. Then, a few years later, those are no longer enough, and there appears, virtually out of the ether, yet another set of requirements. The tensions between offshore financial centers and major high-tax industrialized countries reminds me of an episode of British Empire history. Now, we have young people in the audience today, Premier. I don't know if they teach this in school anymore, but I think in our day, I am 100% sure they taught you and I this particular episode. Does anyone remember the story of the Spanish Armada? Large, powerful, but ponderous Spanish galleons versus the small, swift, and maneuverable English ships. One well-targeted broadside from any one of those galleons could totally obliterate any one of those small ships. But by being watchful and nimble, those small ships not only survived, but prevailed. The parallel here is obvious. The only advantage offshore financial centers have is nimbleness. We can move much more quickly than the ponderous yet very powerful large countries. Combine that with good intelligence as to what the international trends are, offshore financial territories can use their nimbleness to their advantage in a hostile world. For example, in the area of cooperation with international law enforcement, non-compliance is like allowing the great galleons to rain down a broadside on your little ship. So, cooperation with international law enforcement is essential. The challenges that face offshore financial centers have never been greater. But if we take our lessons from the Spanish Armada, cooperate with legitimate initiatives to improve transparency with the international community, and demonstrate the economic value proposition we provide the global economy, we can survive the current international tax onslaught, and at the same time, provide a viable means for our islands to earn foreign exchange necessary for a good standard of living for our people.
My message this morning is very, very simple. My government wants to forge a strong partnership with the local BVI media to ensure the success of BVI Forward. Financial services, as we all know, we've been saying this for a long time, we all accept this, are directly responsible for over 60 cents of every dollar the government spends on running and developing the territory. And when you consider the spin-off effects and other sectors such as construction, housing, purchase of goods and services, commercial rents, and other expenditures related to the sector, you clearly see the critical importance of the sector to the economy and the life that we live here in the British Virgin Islands. The Financial Services Consultants Report made a very compelling case for change, and you have been reminded of the 10 priority initiatives just a few minutes ago that will drive this change. These are transformative changes that we have to undertake. They'll not be easy, I think we accept that, but they're something that we must do, and they're definitely achievable. These changes will affect every member of the community, and we have to ensure that every member of this community is engaged on their level. This is where you, friends of the media, play a critical role. I'm sure that Mr. Brower will share an informed and objective view of your role in this engagement. More importantly, I'm sure you share why it is critical for the continued maturity of our democracy. My government clearly acknowledges the independence of the media and its role in ensuring balance, fairness, and transparency. And my government's intent is to be a partner, helping the media to fulfill its role, particularly when it comes to the objective we have in mind today. I think this can be achieved if we keep our focus on what is the best interest of the British Virgin Islands and its people. As human beings, we will have disagreements from time to time, but this should not interfere with maintaining a healthy and open relationship based on mutual trust and respect. I know sometimes when the media asks a question, the answer is not exactly as I'd like it to be, but we have to provide the answer based on the information that is available. Let me close by reiterating my government's total commitment to BVI Forward and to a strong partnership with the media in the best interest of the territory. I encourage you to work closely with the Financial Services Implementation Unit and my ministry to ensure the success of BVI Forward.
The starting point really in any discussion about the role of the media has to be to put the media in a constitutional framework. And in putting the media in a constitutional framework, we are, of course, speaking really about freedom of expression. And as I think you are all aware, our Constitution does provide in Article 23 for one of the fundamental rights, freedom of expression. And it, of course, says that no person shall be hindered in the enjoyment of his or her freedom of expression. And a person's freedom of expression includes freedom to hold opinions without interference, freedom to receive information and ideas without interference, freedom to disseminate information and ideas without interference, whether to the public generally or to any person or class of persons, and freedom to, from interference with his or her correspondence or other means of communication. And it has been largely construed that that is the constitutional provision under which the role and functioning of the media falls. While that provision does not specifically mention the media, as it does in some other jurisdictions, that is indeed the fundamental provision which gives rise to the particular role and function of the media in a democratic society. And that role is a very, very important one indeed. In fact, the media, in its broadest sense, because now, you know, we are not just speaking, of course, of print media, we're not just speaking of radio stations, we have online newspapers, et cetera, et cetera. And there are some definitions of media that have been attempted in a number of places like Australia and so on. And it's a fairly broad definition that would cover a number of types of organizations that involve in the business of disseminating opinions and giving analysis on topical issues. But the media has been described as the fourth estate. I don't know how many of you as members of the media realize that, but you are the fourth estate. And estate in the legal context has a very important connotation. It means that you have a very fundamental role to play in a democratic society. So just as we have government in its branches of the executive and legislative and judicial branches, we also have the media and its role as the fourth estate in terms of the strengthening and development of democratic principles and democratic governance in a society. This means that the media has a wide role. It has the role, the typical role, of course, of the watchdog and the protection of the watchdog on government actions. It has the role of spreading the searchlight on issues of malfeasance and corruption and so on. But it also has as one of its primary roles, the whole question of disseminating information, informing the public, and contributing through that process to the economic advancement and development of a country. The importance of financial services to the continued prosperity of the British Virgin Islands cannot be underestimated. And while there have been some efforts in the past geared towards educating the public with regard to the role of financial services, and in particular, the types of offerings which the BVI has in that area, and how important financial services is to the economy and the continued viability and sustainability of the economy. It has been recognized that most of those initiatives have only brought about a certain level of achievement or responsiveness. And as part of this initiative, which has come to a head, so to speak, in the McKenzie report, and Mrs. Lorna Smith has spoken to this at some length in her presentation, you see how important it is in two particular ways. One is to educate the public as to the importance and indeed the attractiveness of this industry to the territory. There are certain misconceptions about the financial services industry in the BVI. And the media also has a role, in my respectful submission, in educating the public and dispelling some of those misconceptions. For example, one typical misconception is that the BVI is a tax haven. But when you really look at what it means to be a tax haven, you will see that the BVI is not a tax haven. The second one, which is related to that, is that the financial services industry is that secretive industry where confidentiality is the primary objective as a cover for persons who are involved in illegal and otherwise unwarranted activity internationally. And that certainly is not the role of the financial services industry in the BVI. The role of the financial services industry in the BVI, as it is elsewhere, really is to provide legal vehicles and mechanisms through which persons throughout the world, internationally, can make investments and can protect their assets. And you will see, for example, the BVI has become extremely well known with regard to incorporations. And that means that we are incorporating companies, we are incorporating entities in the BVI that are being utilized in structures worldwide for legitimate business purposes. Of course, if you are a country that is at the forefront of that aspect of the financial services industry in the world, you would expect that from time to time there would be a few bad apples. And the focus often shifts so much to those bad apples at the expense of the rest of the industry and the very important and legitimate role which the industry plays in the context of the BVI and indeed internationally. What certainly I would like to see more of in the British Virgin Islands, and this is where the media comes in, is in-depth analysis of the aspects of the financial services industry, conducting the necessary research and speaking to the people who are directly involved and concerned, with a view to highlighting the key aspects of the industry in BVI that make up the industry and make the industry what it is today and how successful it really has been. Tying in those things with the economic benefits and the viability and sustainability of the British Virgin Islands. So the media, while it has a critical role as a watchdog for society, also has that important role of informing and disseminating information that is of importance to the country and of importance for the populace to be aware of and to take on board. And this brings me to the second aspect of what I think this is so critical. And it has to do with British Virgin Islanders, belongers, and the role that they play in the financial services industry, or the role that they ought to play in the financial services industry. One of the focuses of this entire initiative, it is not just simply to buttress and sustain the financial services industry for years to come, but it is to increase and to heighten the role of belongers, British Virgin Islanders, in the industry, and particularly at key levels in the industry, including ownership of financial services entities who are players within the industry. We look around in the industry over the years and we see that there are British Virgin Islanders, there are belongers who are playing important roles. There are those who are at mid or even top management position in some of these entities, but not enough. So part of the initiative which Mrs. Smith has spoken about is not to educate purely for the purpose of understanding, but to educate with a view to exposing our young people or students at an early age to what the financial services industry is all about and the opportunities that present themselves within that industry for them within the context of the economy of the British Virgin Islands.
We are very excited about the opportunity to recognize and acknowledge the members of Team BVI, which is a team of financial services, private sector experts who lend their experience, their time, and their ideas to really drive the work of BVI Finance. Team BVI is an integral part of the work that we do in marketing and promoting the territory, and we're very grateful for that. And we're extremely happy to be able to acknowledge you and recognize you in this way. We're also very excited about the BVI Forward campaign and the pinning of the other financial services ambassadors. We are excited about the opportunities that lay ahead for financial services in the BVI. And we are excited about the country as a whole becoming more involved in financial services.
We have a program where we've twinned a Team BVI member with a champion, and we think that is a very nice arrangement so that they can continue to work together. And champions are persons who are known in the community. They're not financial services industry persons. They're persons who in their own right have a following and who have a constituency and who can reach persons in different sectors of the community. And the whole idea behind the twinning arrangement and the whole idea behind champions is to make sure that everyone in the community learns about financial services and that everyone gets the message of what is being done under the BVI Forward program.